It is a friendship made possible by the battles that you fought and the conduct of the peace that you won. It's a relationship that exists today between families based on trust, mutual respect, and an inner strength, understood and respected by the descendants of former combatants, and further reinforced by our shared response to modern-day challenges and tests, as remarkably demonstrated in northern Japan when U.S. Armed Forces stood side by side with the Self-Defense Force within hours of an unprecedented crisis and proved beyond measure what it means to be a friend in our tradition. So on behalf of the Pacific Fleet, the men and women who stand watch around the world, we thank you. Strong leaders are needed in order for the pivotal lessons of this extraordinary legacy to endure. Today's guest speaker is such a leader. Secretary Mavis brings a unique combination of life experiences to the Department of the Navy for the benefit of sailors and Marines.
70 years ago, in this place and at this hour, a surprise attack began against the United States of America, and in less than 2 hours, that attack claimed the lives of more than 2,400 Americans, nearly 90% of them sailors and Marines. It also left 1,200 wounded. Almost 1,200 deaths came from one ship, USS Arizona. Of the 90 ships that anchored that morning, 21 were sunk or damaged, including Arizona and all the other battleships in Pearl, California, Maryland, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Nevada. It was in President Franklin Roosevelt's searing and unforgettable declaration, a day that will live in infamy, pushing us into a world war that would change both the world and warfare irrevocably. But for those whose final resting place is in the waters here, and all those who gave their lives that day 70 years ago in the service of their country and in the cause of freedom, they will never change. They remain in our minds and our hearts as they were that day, young and strong and courageous. Although the attack surprised our forces, they immediately started fighting back. We know the stories. The steward aboard the USS Shaw, with no training, manning a gun and bringing down a Japanese aircraft. The machinist, blinded by explosives, but rescuing sailors caught below decks of the Nevada. The Air Force, the Army Air Force lieutenant, still in his pajamas, piloting an old P-36 and shooting down another Japanese plane. And for their actions that day, 15 men, Binion, Finn, Flaherty, Fuqua, Hill, Jones, Kidd, Parrish, Reeves, Ross, Scott, Tomich, Van Valkenburg, Ward, and Young were awarded the Medal of Honor. 2/3 of those, 10 of them, posthumously. 51 Navy Crosses, 53 Silver Stars, 4 Navy and Marine Corps Medal, 1 Distinguished Flying Cross, 4 Distinguished Service Crosses, 1 Distinguished Service Medal, and 3 Bronze Stars were also awarded for that day. And we know that there were hundreds and hundreds more acts of courage that went unrecorded. As was said later of Iwo Jima, that day, uncommon courage was a common valor. The architect of the attack, Admiral Yamamoto, has been depicted as lamenting, even as the Japanese planes returned to their carriers, that he feared all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant. The quote cannot be proven historically true, but the sentiment certainly was. The forces here on December 7th fought back. America fought back, and we built back as well. The attack failed to damage the shipyard facilities here, where American technological skill, economic might, and just sheer determination played another key role in ultimate victory. Because of both that day and in the aftermath, the sacrifice and service of civilians were also critical. Nearly 70 civilians died that day and many more were wounded. A New York Times story in 1943 detailing the efforts to rebuild from the attack 70 years ago said, "Nowhere in the world have Navy and civilian workers toiled together in such close coordination. Their joint achievement has never been equaled." That joint achievement raised, repaired, and returned to service all but 3 of the ships sunk here that day. And many saw significant service in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. And we all know that by a stroke of luck, the 3 Pacific-based American aircraft carriers were away from Pearl that day. Those 3 carriers helped turn the tide at Midway just 6 months later, with the Pearl shipyard playing a critical role. As a former service officer and as Secretary of the Navy, it's a profound privilege to offer the heartfelt thanks of a nation to these individuals here today who survived and then who thrived, leading the way for our nation to survive that day and then to thrive in the 7 decades since. We rightly honor every one of our veterans, but there will always be a special place in our hearts for those who began the fight here at Pearl Harbor that led us to victory. You, the survivors, as well as those who were lost, earned with your blood, with your sacrifice, a legacy you have passed on to those who have followed. Your efforts burnished the reputation of the Navy and Marine Corps as the most formidable expeditionary fighting force the world has ever known. Your legacy is leadership and heroism. I hope and I believe that we serving today are living up to your example, working to assure that your legacy is sustained. Our responsibility is to learn from you, learn from your sacrifice, and be prepared to deter foes when we can and defeat them when we must. When I became secretary, our fleet was 43 ships fewer than it was on 9/11, and the smallest it had been since 1916. Today, just as you did after Pearl Harbor, we are working to rebuild the fleet. We're engaged in constructing more agile, more flexible ships and aircraft and developing new ways to power those platforms. We need look no further than the events leading to the attack here at Pearl Harbor to understand why the U.S. Navy is trying to diversify its fuel supply. Cut off by the United States from oil, the Empire of Japan felt compelled to seize oil-rich territories despite risking war with the United States. That effort that began here proved their strategy to be a catastrophic mistake. How nations get and use energy is and always has been a critical security and strategic issue, and this era is no exception. One lesson of Pearl Harbor is also that America must look west and understand the importance of the Pacific to ours and the world's security. On his recent trip to this region, our president stated in no uncertain terms that as a Pacific nation, the United States will continue to play a large and long-term role in this region, including assuring unimpeded commerce and freedom of navigation. The U.S. Navy stands ready to uphold its long tradition to execute our unique power, our unique ability to project power without impinging on anyone else's sovereignty, and to deter threats to peace by protecting the global commons. December 7th, 1941's infamy has changed to a day that will live in remembrance. In remembering, we can see how far we've come. At the 10th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, our once implacable foe had become and remains our unshakable ally. At the 20th anniversary, we were fearful that a Cold War with the Soviet Union might turn hot as the Berlin Wall was built. By the 50th anniversary, we had won the Cold War. And although our presence in the Pacific never changed, our focus moved to the Middle East. On the 60th anniversary, the United States had just experienced the worst domestic attack since Pearl Harbor. Now, 70 years later, we're beginning to close out a decade of conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, and once again, increase our attention to the Pacific. The Navy, the Marine Corps, will continue to build on the heroism and the commitment to freedom that was demonstrated so vibrantly, so vividly, and so often here 70 years ago. To the survivors here today, and to those who are with us only in spirit and memory, thank you. Thank you for your legacy. Thank you for the opportunity to honor your heroism. We must never forget. We must never fail, as you did not fail, to meet and defeat any challenge to America and what America stands for. Thank you very much.
Secretary of the Navy, Ray Navy, thank you.
I also want to thank those Pearl Harbor survivors who are here today, entirely on their own, made the decision to pay their honor and respects to their comrades who are still here. It was gratifying to find, as I heard, over 120 members of the association and Pearl Harbor survivors are here. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your service. Now please welcome Lieutenant General Dwayne Thiessen, Commander of the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Pacific, who will introduce today's keynote speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and especially our survivors and veterans here today, it's my privilege to introduce the keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Mal Middlesworth. He's the Vice President of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association. He's also a Marine. He's here with his wife, and he was proud to tell me that in Elgin, Illinois, they were high school sweethearts, but they've now been married for 67 years.
We gather here today to commemorate the 70th anniversary of one of the most significant events of the 20th century. We also commemorate those comrades who have died since the attack, and those survivors who cannot make one more trip to join us here today. For we want to honor them for their sacrifice and service. The day of infamy united our country as never before. the country rallied around the slogan, "Remember Pearl Harbor." The home front responded with sacrifice and dedication and built an industrial complex that would not only manufacture the tools of war, but would also provide the prosperity and the jobs for the troops when they returned home. On Veterans Day, my wife and I visited a Christian school in Southern California. The students ranged from preschool to 8th grade. Their parents obviously were there. However, their proud grandfathers also attended, who were World War II veterans. After the ceremony, the veterans lined up outside the school, and they passed by, all the students passed by, class by class. They shook our hands and said, "Thank you for your service," or something similar. To me, the most significant part of the enduring legacy is what we did after Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, I was a member of the Marine Detachment of the heavy cruiser USS San Francisco in Pearl Harbor. The San Francisco would win 17 major battle stars and the first presidential unit citation of the war. On December 16, we left Pearl Harbor for Wake Island. In February of 1942, the Frisco was involved in air attacks on New Guinea. Butch O'Hara that day shot down 5 planes and became an instant ace. At 2 a.m. on November 13th, we would take 50 shells, 12 of them from 2 Japanese battleships, in a night ship-to-ship battle at Guadalcanal. We had no battleships. We won the battle, and the enemy battleships were sunk. Basically, everybody topside was either killed or wounded. I was blown from the navigation bridge to the signal bridge by an anti-personnel shell. I asked to get off the ship when my loader on my 20 millimeter was killed by a 40 millimeter shell from one of our own aircraft carriers. I was standing where he was shot just a couple of seconds before he was hit. However, the Marines are an equal opportunity employer. If you tire of cruising with the Navy, they will find you a beautiful tropical island. 4 months later, I found myself again at Guadalcanal, this time as a member of the 1st Marine Division, preparing to invade the island of Peleliu. The 1st Marine Division suffered so many casualties, the Army 81st Division was added to the forces on the island. Both units suffered over 50% casualties, totally 6,800 deaths. The Japanese lost 12,000 men. This was the highest casualty rate for U.S. troops on any battle in the Pacific Theater. My being at Pearl Harbor on December 7th has provided me with the honor of being a member of a very unique band of brothers and sisters, the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association. The association thanks the Navy, the National Park Service, and the Pacific Historic Park staff for allowing us to participate in this 70th anniversary event. For it is they who must continue the enduring legacy we leave behind. Let no author, historian, or politician attempt to rewrite the history of what happened here 70 years ago. You sitting in the audience must be the guardians of our truth. Let no one disturb the sacred water. In the harbor, they hold the watery graves of that date of infamy, and those among us whose ashes are yet to join you. Remember Pearl Harbor. Keep America alert. God bless you, and God bless America.
You don't have one of these, though.
Yeah, I was phone Mike. Yeah.
Sir, thank you for your service.
Goldsborough.
How are you, sir?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Red tail and all, huh?
Very proud of your service. Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. How you doing, sir? Thank you very much for coming.
You're a trailblazer. Good to see you here.
Attention all media, the media brought for the memorial will be leading in 2.
You'll have a good life after using your election.
My day is Chief Petty Officer. That's you today. Thank you very much. Dave?
Dave, did you take two?
That's an awesome shirt.
Thank you, sir.
What years were you in the forces? When did you start? How old were you?
Just press that button in front, right there. Thank you.
I was in the Air Force in World War II. I was in the Army Air Force 12, which later changed to 15th Air Force. And we operated out of Ramitelli, Italy. And patrolling the waters around the Mediterranean area and providing bomber escort for the Air Force on their raids into Germany, particularly the one on Berlin. All in all, it was a very satisfying assignment, and we contributed quite a bit to the Mediterranean War.
Gonna close my eyes.
The Mediterranean
Gonna watch you move.
North Africa.
Running through this night.
Hi, Mark. I'm Tom McGriff.
I'm a retired Senior Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy. I served in the submarine force for 23 years. I was stationed here at Pearl twice, from 59 to 61 and 69 to 71. And I've been working with AMVETS for the last 20 years. I'm a past national commander, and I'm glad to be part of Veterans Serving Veterans. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it, and I appreciate your service. Hope you have a great day. Thank you. Can I shake your hand again? Thank you.
A Tuskegee Airmen. Oh, wow. Hey, thank you. We have a Tuskegee Airman back in Oklahoma.
Yeah?
In no water.
My father was.
Yeah.
Frank Scott was one of the 32 that came out of the bottom of the ship on the USS Oklahoma the following day. So he was trapped down below in an air pocket with 32 other men, and they eventually got them cut out. It was quite an ordeal. Well, the whole thing was really quite an ordeal for all those servicemen. But God willing, he came out. I'm here.
My name is Ed Schuler. I was aboard the USS Phoenix CL-46. We were tied to a buoy near AIA landing about 1,000 yards from the Arizona when the attack started. I was aboard ship, and my station for anti-aircraft fire was on the main deck, taking care of all the instruments on the 5-inch guns. And after that, we went to general quarters, and I moved to the director, which was the highest spot on the ship. We went out, chased the Japanese fleet, fortunately didn't catch them, and we had an experience where we almost had to fire on our own ships because they did not know the recognition signal, Charlie Able Jig, that was put out by the War Department on the first day of battle. We had loaded the guns. We finally gave them an AA, who are you? The universal code, and she replied, we're the Minneapolis, we're the Minneapolis. So having loaded all the guns, we had to train them off to the port side. With one pull of the trigger, I fired all of them. That was my first shot in World War II.
Wonderful. You just had a big convention, didn't you? Yeah. Does he know? I'm hard of hearing. I don't know if he is. Okay. I was Donald Barnhart. I was a private at the Battle of Okinawa. I was an infantryman. Get my ass shot on all the time. What else you want to know?
This is absolutely wonderful. God bless you, sir. I fought in Vietnam in 1970.
Fighter Group, Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah, that was, I've seen some of the shows on that. Boy, they really had some fighters. Yeah. I was a minesweeper here at Pearl Harbor for the last 2 years of the war about. But there was a gang on the opposite side of where I was. They were on the Condor. Well, the Condor was the one that discovered the two midget subs off Pearl Harbor on December 7th. And a couple of years later, it was my ship. I was captain of it. And some of the original crew was still on board. So it was very interesting talking with them. I know one of them said, hey, we expended 35 rounds of 30 caliber ammunition from those Lewis guns they had, the ones with the merry-go-round on the top. But then I got some other ships, but after the war was over, I got to be commander of 16 of them because I was the only one with experience left. The rest of them were sent to new ships.
Yeah.
So I got stationed there for all of my career.
And we are part of a world around tour on historic sites, and we fortunately got this event with us as well.
First of its kind.
Wow.
I was on the USS Phoenix, CL-46, commissioned in 1938. We were tied to a buoy near Aiea Landing, about 1,000 yards from the Arizona. When the battle started, we didn't have power up. Our awnings were rigged. We couldn't fire guns until we got everything in gear, and it took quite a while. And after that, first surge, we proceeded to go out past Fort Allen and the north end, but unfortunately there was a submarine sunk there, so we had to turn around and come back to the buoy. When we came back to the buoy, the horizontal bombers started hitting us, and they dropped their bombs on the starboard side and missed us. They turned around and dropped bombs on the port side and missed us again. It just caused some damage to the ship, but nobody got killed. And then after that, we went out past the Arizona, who was still blowing up a little bit, and past the Oklahoma, which was capsized. And we were strafed going out of the mouth of the harbor. We're doing about 23 knots till we chased the Japanese Armada for a couple of days and then came back to Pearl. Then we had a gun blow up, so we had to go back to Mare Island, have a new gun. Came back, went back and got some ships to take out to the Solomons and to Australia, and we operated in the Indian Ocean for 9 months and the rest of the Pacific for the rest of the war.
Well, I thought that would look good on you. That looks real good on you.
Well,
You buying a aloha shirt for a guy you never met before.
wow. The thing
That's
is,
pretty nice.
I knew for sure she's going to find me because she knows it's true.
That's right. That's exactly how I knew you.
And that's why.